The stage name Example actually came about when I was 11. So I went to school not far from here actually. It's up the road there in Wandsworth. And I started rapping when I was about 11, mainly to fit in. Because I suppose the dominant culture at school for music and fashion and trainers and film and everything was black culture. And I was rubbish at football, I was rubbish at basketball. So I just started rapping to fit in a bit more. Which I suppose when you're, from that age of like 11 to 16, you just kind of want to fit in. It's not until after that, I suppose, you start, deciding who you are, where you want to be and where you want to fit in. And it was just simple, really. My initials are E.G., Elliot Gleave, and some kid who was way bigger than me basically said, you're going to be called Example. And that's been there. And I'm 33 now, so it's been 22 years. Growing up and, going to college and university, I never really I never knew any famous people. I never knew any musicians. There had been no one in my family or, like close family friends who'd been successful in the entertainment industry. So I didn't really know anything about acting, anything about singing, music, rapping. Didn't know how to get in the industry. Like, a lot of the guys in my family were builders, taxi drivers. My dad worked in information technology. My mum was a psychologist, so there wasn't really anyone to pass any information on to me. So I kind of was just like self-taught. From the age of about 14, 15, I wanted to be an actor. And when I got to about 21, 22, I started recording hip-hop demos. So before I started releasing electronic music, before I started singing, I was just rapping. And one day, I went to an open mic night. I don't know how much of these exist anymore, but this was before MySpace, before YouTube, before SoundCloud. This was when I was selling my initial releases on vinyl, and I ended up just going to an open mic night and just sitting down with this guy who knew a lot about the industry, and I was like, what's a PR? What's marketing? Where'd you meet video directors? All this kind of thing. I actually ended up editing a lot of my early videos after getting some mates to shoot them on a budget. All my songs were on vinyl for the first few years, so I actually used to hand deliver them around the country in the back of my mum's Vauxhall Corsa. And it was, so I got a fresh record deal in 2005 with The Streets, Mike Skinner. And I've just kind of learnt as I went along. I didn't really know anything about fame or success in the entertainment industry. I didn't really know anyone really wealthy. So the whole thing's just been a learning process. I'm still learning now. I still don't know the answers to a lot of things. There's constantly new things cropping up. I mean, I haven't had a hit for about 2 years now, and in that time, Shazam, Spotify, SoundCloud have just exploded in the last 2 years, and there's all the goalposts have shifted. I see. So if I started rapping at 11, that was mainly other people's lyrics. I didn't start writing my own lyrics until 14 or 15. I wanted to be an actor probably until I was like 18, 19. Then I wanted to be a film director. I came out of university, I was an editor at a TV channel for Viacom, so MTV, Nickelodeon, what used to be Paramount Comedy Channel, it's now Comedy Central. Started doing voiceovers. Throughout this time, from around when I was 20 to 23, I was recording a lot of hip-hop demos. It was one day someone I knew handed, one of these guys that I'd met at a hip-hop battle event, took my record, really liked it, handed it to Zane Lowe and Pete Tong at Radio 1. A few guys at XFM back in the day, and these guys played it, and the next thing I know I was offered 3 record deals. But that was like 2004, 2005. It wasn't then until 2007 my first album actually came out, which was on Mike Skinner's The Beats label, which was part of Warner. And then after that, it then took, I then got dropped by Warner, was going to go back to my day job. My whole family moved to Australia. I nearly went with them. Ended up living by myself with my granddad. I carried on touring, I was running into debt, and Ministry of Sound picked me up. And then I had my first top 20 in 2009, my first top 5 in 2010, and then and then a couple of number ones in 2011. So, you're really looking at, it depends where you want to think I actually started. It's, it's either 15 years of development on the writing, creative, rapping side, or it's probably 7, 8 years development in terms of contacts and business know-how. And as I said before, I'm still learning now on a daily basis. I never shut it down once. I remember I was going up to Scotland in like a splitter van. It was like taking 8 hours to drive. I had my mate driving. I mean, the van must have cost me 200 quid. The driver was probably getting paid 50. My bass player was getting 30. I think I was paying like a DJ 20 quid. We were staying in travel lodges or random people would meet asking if we could sleep on their floor. I was eating free Nando's at the time because my first album had mentioned Nando's. So luckily I was getting free Nando's, so that was saving us a few bob. And then, yeah, I mean, I was traveling up Scotland thinking with all that in mind, I was probably getting paid 300 quid for the gig, but the whole thing was costing me 550. So I was losing money and there'd be 8 people in the crowd. But I'd give it my best and I'd try and do the best show possible. You know, and that was like 2008. And 4 years after that, I was playing the SECC Arena in Glasgow to 12,000 people. So it was just constant self-belief. I think both my mum and dad just instilled a real sense of ambition and self-belief. You know, my dad had a very tough time growing up. My mum had a very tough time. They both came from nothing and, you know, became really successful. And I suppose it was like they were hard enough on me and helpful enough in equal measures. In terms of like, I'd ask my dad for advice, but if I was like, can you lend me some money? He'd be like, nah, you go out there. He's like, no one's going to knock on your door. He's like, you got to go and knock on other people's doors. I think, for example, I'm on my 6th album now. I've played in like 80-something countries all around the world. That, for me, is a personal achievement. But if I like to think about how other people want to remember me, I just think, like, just kind of a funny, you know what I mean, light-hearted, down-to-earth guy who just liked entertaining people. Because I never wanted to, as I got into this, even though I'm like very proud of my rapping and my songwriting and my singing, I've never thought people are coming to me because they think I'm the best rapper or the best singer or the best songwriter. You know, there's obviously always going to be some fans who think you're the best at certain things. But the way I see myself is I think I'm one of the best entertainers. Like, if you put me up on that stage against the best in the world, I'll give everyone a good run for their money. I feel like I give a world-class performance. So that's how I'd like to be remembered. And there's Elliot. I don't know. I don't really think there's massive difference between Elliot and Example because all my songs are so honest. Everything you've ever heard in any of my songs has been about my real life. So, you know, and people meet me in the street all the time and, you know, I just chat to anybody, have pictures with anyone. Constantly, I don't know, I suppose, I always just think, what would upset my mum? You know what I mean? So, I don't know, just be humble, be a good person. Give to charity every now and again. Treat your mates at Pizza Express, you know what I mean? I mean, it's tough for some people because some people don't have the support network at home for, you know, in terms of family or friends or partners. I found it tough when I got into the music industry. I'd never really been a heavy drinker and I'd never been into drugs and partying, but I think it's something that comes with the job sometimes. And I kind of went to a bit of a dark place and I probably didn't open up enough to the close people around me. I never went off the rails so much that I thought my life was in danger or that I was upsetting anyone. I don't think I became a bad person, but I definitely dealt with all my demons way too long after I should have done, you know? So after I started getting a bit of success in 2010, and I didn't really come to terms with a lot of this stuff until probably 2013, and I found it important. My mum and dad were living in Australia, my sister was in Australia, I was over here. It was about actually getting the courage to actually sit down and be honest with them. And luckily my wife as well is an amazing support for me because she sort of came from a similar place. You know, she was famous in Australia in her own right, successful, but, you know, I think got a bit carried away with partying at some point. So it was kind of lucky that we found each other, and I've been a lot happier since then. My song was close to my heart and that I'm proudest of is probably Kickstarts, and that's purely because up until that point, that was like my eureka moment. When I wrote that, I wrote it all by myself. There's one producer involved, Sub Focus, who made it. That song was like a 50-50 track. You know, it wasn't like a team of writers involved. It was the first time I really thought I nailed what should be my singing voice, my sound. Singing, rapping, up-tempo beats, festival anthem, club banger. And that was where I thought, like, wow, I've got the recipe now. This is what Example is. You know, it's going to be uplifting, emotional club bangers, you know, cutting edge production, bits of rap and bits of singing, and that was the moment. And then that song was the first song where I started moving up the festival lineups, started actually making real money, started playing outside of the UK, because I'd only played up in the UK until that point. So that will always be my favourite song, because it was a turning point, and it made me realise what I had to do and who I should be. And, you know, a lot of songs, you know, Stay Awake, Change the Way You Kiss Me, Will Be Coming Back, all kind of came off the back of that one.